As the title placard says, this is my Gojira 2014 or Godzilla 2014 review part 2, the spoiler-tastic edition. I'll be going over the good, the bad, and the ugly. I'll be going in depth. There'll be spoilers abounding, so if you haven't seen this film yet, don't watch this. Or you can watch it, but don't, leave dirty messages in my comment section. You ruined the movie for me, you bastard! So, without further ado, the good, the bad, and the ugly. Okay then, let's get on with the good. Now, there will be spoilers, so I'm going to give you 10 seconds to leave if you don't want to see the spoilers or hear about the spoilers. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Okay. Alright. Okay. This film kicks. This film is the best Godzilla film I have seen since 2004. It is a well done reboot of a franchise. My only nitpicks are a few, and those will be in the ugly section. But let's get down to the nitty gritty. Basically, Bryan Cranston is a scientist who is the head scientist at a nuclear facility in Gojira, Japan. And basically, there's a meltdown, and there's been a series of abnormalities, and everyone thinks they're earthquakes, but they aren't earthquakes. And he sends his wife down, who also works at the same nuclear plant, to go investigate what's going on. What winds up happening is the plant goes into meltdown, and she can't escape because he has to shut the shutters so that it doesn't go into the outside air and cause a major nuclear breach and irradiate the entire area. So basically, this is set in the 1998 in the film. So basically, which is kind of a dig at the Godzilla 98 film. But basically, so 1998, something terrible happens. This man's wife dies. His son, it's his birthday. So all this shit happened on his birthday. His wife dies. The plant goes out, and he has to raise his son by himself. Basically, he in the ensuing 16 years, he becomes obsessed, and I mean really friggin' obsessed with the fact that he believes that this was not an accident. Something bad happened, and he wants to find out what happened. Now, earlier in the film, before all this happens, you see a Dr. Serizawa who works for the Monarch Corporation, which is kind of making fun of Mothra. Kind of playing off the Mothra thing. And basically, they come to this dig, and they find this Godzillasaurus skeleton. And I guess his associate scientist is like, is this the same? No, this one's far older. And they find 2 eggs. There were 2 eggs there, 2 chrysalises, and one hatched. And this is in the Philippines, and it went to the closest nuclear reactor, which was in Gojira, Japan. And it caused the actual meltdown. Now, this thing feeds off of radiation. All the monsters in this new Godzilla universe feed off of radiation, but these things really feed off of radiation. So basically, up until this point, you haven't seen Godzilla. You've seen in the opening credits, you see in 1954 where they tried to bomb Godzilla out of existence, which is stupid because Godzilla eats radiation. Any Godzilla fan can tell you that. He absorbs it. It's how he survives. But anyway, so they tried to bomb Godzilla in 1954, but that shit didn't work. And he went back down into the deep. We see that these 2 new monsters, one has hatched and escaped, and the other one, I guess they did experiments on and then buried it in the nuclear depository in Nevada, which there actually is a nuclear depository in Nevada. This is important for the story, so we're moving on. So basically, Bryan Cranston is a conspiracy theorist. He's been arrested by the Japanese police for trespassing on the site where in Gojira, because they claim it's radioactive. It's not radioactive because this monster has been there devouring radiation and maturing into its adult form. So basically, this thing hatches. He gets arrested. Bryan Cranston gets arrested. His son, who's now an adult and has a family of his own, comes to bail him out in Japan. And he's like, son, we have to finish this. We have to find out what happened. And they go to Gojira. It's like decrepit and falling apart. And he pulls out a radiation thing. He says, there's no radiation. It's clean. They get arrested again. But this time, shit's about to get real, because basically Dr. Serizawa from 1998 is like, there's no baseline for this. Well, Bryan Cranston had the baseline. This thing is communicating, and it's about to hatch. And apparently, not only is it communicating, but whatever it was communicating with answered it. And that's where shit gets real. Because then, in the film, it hatches. And when it hatches, the shit just this thing, they call it a mutated unidentified terrestrial object. But even though it's not terrestrial, this thing can fly, so that makes no sense. But the Muto, basically, the male Muto is kind of small, but it can fly. And its special ability is that it can release an electromagnetic pulse which fries electronics. So jets don't do shit to it. Helicopters, nothing. Plus, it can fly, which is dangerous. It eventually escapes after destroying the site, all the structures around it. And Bryan Cranston is horrifically injured, trying to find his son. But, I mean, he's already passed on the data that Dr. Serizawa needs. And shit gets real. The American military comes in and says, okay, we're taking over. We're going to deal with these monsters. Because in any kaiju monster movie, the military has to think that they can just bomb things into submission. Not ever real. And in proper Japanese-style kaiju films, the military ain't going to do shit. Okay. So basically, after this happens, some other shit goes down. Bryan Cranston dies. They kill him off early. And Dr. Serizawa is like on this boat with Admiral, I guess, on a U.S. Navy vessel. And he's like, they're like, well, what can we do, Doctor? How can we stop this monster? The dude's like, wait a second. It was calling, the male Muto was calling another one. And they're like, we have to go to Nevada right now. When they go there, they find that where they put this chrysalis, this nuclear chrysalis, it's been ripped out, and something is gotten out. And it's bigger than the male. This is the female, and she's got a belly full of eggs, and shit is about to get real. The male is going to meet up with the female, and you're going to have more of these damn things. More of them. Now, Dr. Serizawa comes to the conclusion that, hey, we have something. There is a way of balancing this out. When things get out of balance, nature has a way of balancing itself out. In this case, it's going to be a gigantic alpha predator, the king of all monsters, as he calls it, Godzilla. That's right, the king of all monsters. So then we're treated to a lot of location hopping. They go from Gojira to Hawaii, where the Muto lands, and Godzilla tries to fight this thing. He does okay, but I mean, it can fly, so it flies away to meet up with its female. And then the military gets their bright idea. They've been told that these monsters feed off of radiation, and that radiation like sustains them. They're gonna use a shielded nuke to lure them out into the ocean and blow them away with a high yield nuclear warhead. which is promptly stolen by the female Muto, or no, the male Muto, who then offers it to the female, and she lays her eggs, and he fertilizes them, and, you know, shit gets real. Godzilla is now on the warpath, because now it's moved from Hawaii to San Francisco, and, you know, they're fighting hard. They're fighting deep. Godzilla is trying his damnedest, but then, and he's doing pretty well until, you come to the realization there's two of these fuckers, and they double team him, and they're kicking his ass when there's two of them against him, because basically the male is smaller, but he's airborne, he can get him from behind, and the female is huge, she's about the same size as Godzilla, so it's pretty tough for the King of Monsters. But eventually, our lovely soldier, who also happens to be a explosive device guy, he arms and disarms bombs for the military or the Navy or whatever. Basically, he comes to the realization that, you know, these eggs are going to hatch, so he burns them the fuck up, and the female's attention is drawn towards the explosion from where her eggs are. So basically, she goes over there, and she's like, oh shit, the military has stolen the nuke that she used to lay her eggs, and all her eggs are like dead, like burned to a crisp. So she's really pissed and grieving about that. Godzilla, on the other hand, is still fighting the male, and finally he just gets tired of this shit and tail swipes him into a building, impaling this little fucker. But the building has sustained such structural damage that it falls on Godzilla. He's like, fuck! And he basically, like, you just see him just, like, disappear in a cloud of debris. So our main character, I guess, Paul Brody, the son of Bryan Cranston's character, basically realizes that he's got to get to the dock so they can get this nuke, stick to the original plan of setting it off and luring the monsters away. Basically, so the military guys get to the boat, but they can't get the chain off, and and so it's like, at this point, it's just everything that can go wrong will go wrong. The monster comes and takes out all of them. Paul Brody eventually gets on the boat, and he's setting it out, and he's just kind of, he's like, I made it, the boat's on GPS. No one seems to remember that these monsters have electromagnetic pulses that can basically disable electronics. So at this point, shit gets real, and the monster is about to kill his ass and take the nuke for herself, and then Godzilla, like right when it's about to happen, Godzilla pops up, grabs her, opens her mouth, which I thought in the movie, I thought he was gonna do a jawbreaker like they have in every other kaiju film, because it's a throwback to King Kong doing the jawbreaker on a T-Rex. But no, he opens her mouth and uses his fire breath, which he used earlier in the fight against the female, down her throat, burning off her head, and then he collapses on the shore, which is pretty damn cool. And that's the end of this film. Well, not the end. Basically, you see the survivors coming out, and Godzilla's just like, everyone thinks he's dead, and he wakes up, everyone's like, oh god, and he just goes back into the ocean, because Godzilla. And you see this headline, Godzilla, King of the Monsters, our humanity's savior? Like, in question marks? I don't know. But it's a pretty good send-up for the King of all monsters. So now that we've gone through the good, we'll get to the bad. So, let's get down to the badness of this film, the badassness of this film. Basically, this film leads to, shows that a Western director can be trusted with the Godzilla IP. And the reason why is because it emulates better films. And it doesn't do it as well as the other films. But it emulates Jaws, where you don't even see the shark for like 30 to like an hour into it. For a kaiju fan, I didn't like that too much, but I'll save that for the ugly section. But when they did show the monsters looked appropriately badass. They looked like they could do some damage. And frankly speaking, I'm going to talk about the design of Godzilla. Godzilla looks like a fucking tank. He looks like he can take a licking and keeps on ticking. Godzilla looks badass in this film. Godzilla hasn't looked this badass since 2004. Godzilla looks like he could fuck some shit up. Okay. And that's really friggin' cool. Now, that being said, the other monsters look appropriately threatening. The male Muto looks threatening. The female looks even more threatening. And, you know, the overall tone of the film works out pretty well. Like, we are just parasites, and the Earth itself has its own way of dealing with these issues. And it does. And the tone of the film works out pretty well. Now, the other pretty good significance of this film is that if it makes enough money, they'll make a sequel. And if they make a sequel, I would like to see some other monsters thrown in here, and that would be really cool. Now, that's the bad portion of this, the significance. Now we'll get to the ugly, the things that just weren't quite that good about this film, and then the conclusion after the cut. Okay then, now for the ugly. This film has a few issues that I'm gonna have to mention. The monsters, there's a little too much focus on human characters, and while the human drama is appreciated, it was unnecessary and unneeded. When you go watch a monster film, you just want to see the monster. And that's what a lot of directors just seem to forget. Toho knew this. They showed enough monsters. It seems that Western directors just don't seem to understand. If you make a monster movie, people want to see monsters. That's it. That's what we're here for. We want to see shit getting smashed. You know, the military getting beat, having the shit kicked out of it. We want to see destruction, preferably by gigantic monsters. There wasn't enough screen time of all the monsters. They didn't show enough fighting. I think that the budget was spent on, you know, the actual location. There were a lot of practical special effects, which was good. But I think they should have spent a little bit more time on the actual monsters beating the shit out of each other and doing stuff. Like you see a lot of the monster, then they'll fade away to the human characters, and they'll go back to the monster after they've destroyed some shit, and you see the after effect, but very rarely do you see them actually destroying stuff. Which, I mean, it's effective, but it's not as effective as it could have been had they just shown it just destroying stuff. Like, there's a scene in the movie where the male Muto and the female Muto attack the train that's carrying the nuke, and they steal it. And like, before they do this, they attack a checkpoint that's trying to protect the way. And these damn things are like, you're supposed to infer from non-visual cues what's going on. But it's like, oh, if you just showed it, it'd be cooler. I mean, you know, you don't need Mystique. You've got CGI. You can show some shit getting fucked up. So that was an ugly something that I didn't like about the film. The music in this film is very, like, I heard someone say the orchestra is organic. I personally would have preferred had they just gotten Akira Ifukube, just redone it. And I'll leave some links in the description to the songs that would have made this movie. If they had these orchestrated tracks into the film, it would have been like elevated it even higher. Especially at certain points in the movie, like when Godzilla basically wearily walks to to the when he surfaces and starts fighting these monsters in San Francisco. If they had started playing this music, it would have kicked it over the top. Instead, they went with some generic monster movie bullshit, which, I mean, I know maybe they didn't want to spend the money to get Akira Ifukube's the rights to his music, but I mean, if you're a Godzilla fan, his music is synonymous with the franchise. So, you know, it's kind of like when Warner Brothers redid Superman but had no John Williams tunes, or redid Batman, had no Danny Elfman tunes. I mean, I don't care what anyone says. If you don't have the tunes that are associated with that character or that IP, I don't really give a shit. I'm sorry. That's not what you're... And I know what they were trying to do. They were trying to create an entirely new lineage for this series. But the thing is that Godzilla is so iconic that you can't separate. It's like Superman is so iconic that everyone else who has tried to do Superman, Brandon Routh, this new asshole, like, if you don't have a John Williams score, it's not Superman. It's like if J.J. Abrams is directing the new Star Wars, like, man, fuck you, John Williams. We're gonna do some generic bullshit from Hans Zimmer. And it's like, this isn't Star Wars if you don't have the music, or Indiana Jones and no John Williams tunes. That's not Indiana Jones. Fuck you. And those are some big. I mean, the music thing is really big. The next thing is the Godzilla roar. The roar of Godzilla it's a throwback to what it was originally, but it's been changed enough that you recognize it, and it's not nearly as good as it used to be. Thank you. Okay, now for the conclusion. Basically, this film is a decent monster movie. So, you know, I would advise for people to go see it if they want to see a sequel, because the thing is like, this movie's not perfect. I believe they could fix a lot of the issues if they had a decent sequel. And the things I'd like to see from a sequel, if there was a sequel, is this. More monsters. When I say more monsters, I don't mean more physical monsters in the film, but that would be cool too. But more screen time for the monsters, more destruction, more the military getting fucked up by said monsters, less focus on the human characters, because who gives a shit about them? People watch a monster movie to see the monsters. That's what we want, okay? Now, that being said, this film is not perfect, but it's not bad either. It's a decent monster movie. If you're a Godzilla fan, it's a must-see, and I'm a Godzilla fan, so I had to see it, obviously. If you're not a Godzilla fan, then I would advise you watch this, like, go to a matinee and watch it. Like, go on a weekend at, like, 10 o'clock, 9:30, 10 o'clock, 9:30, 10 o'clock matinee. $6-7. Cheap. Watch it. I definitely think this movie might not be a huge hit in the US, but it will probably do well overseas. Like Pacific Rim did. I hope it makes enough money so that there's a sequel, because I really want to see. I want to see where they're going with this new Godzilla. I want to see. As a huge Godzilla fan, I want to see where they're going. And it's about time for the King of All Monsters to make his return, because I'm tired of fake Godzilla films like Cloverfield and Pacific Rim and whatever new piece of shit movie that's coming out. I want to see the King. Either that or Toho's going to have to come back and re-enter the field. Which, I mean, I'll watch that shit too, because I'm a huge Godzilla. So, that being said, the final verdict is this. If you are a Godzilla fan, this film is a must-see. If you just want to watch a nice monster flick with pretty good acting and some decent special effects, it's a matinee. Watch it at the matinee. If you were expecting everything in a bag of potato chips, you might not want to watch this film. But overall, I'd give this film a Um, if you're a Godzilla fan, watch it. If you're not a Godzilla fan and you just want to watch a good film, watch it. If you are expecting like the best, like if you're expecting Jaws or The Thing, then no. But I mean, you know, it is what it is. So that's the end of my spoiler-tastic part 2 of Godzilla 2014 or Gojira 2014 review. Spoiler-tastic edition. If you have any comments, if you've seen the movie, tell me how you feel in the description field, and that'd be a good thing. Thank you and have a good day.